meeting of the Colerain Township Zoning Commission to order. If everybody will please, August 4th. Zoning Commission meeting was called to order. Let us all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could have a roll call. I see Mr. Faring is walking in right now.
Okay, cool. 1, 2, 3, 4, somebody. Who isn't here?
Bruce Gehring.
I think we can appoint the alternates. If you guys would, Tom, if you don't mind having a seat, because that's where
I know.
Mark sits, and then we'll appoint you, we can call an alternate.
Okay.
Okay,
As needed.
okay, no problem.
So, Mr. Iona, you want to do roll call?
I'll go ahead and do roll call for attendance. We have Mr. Faring.
Yes.
Ms. McMullen.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Gehring. Mr. Grody.
Here. Okay. So one of our two alternates, I assume you're Mr. Wilson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so one of the two alternates, you want to have them be seated or just go with the four?
I think that we can, it's the board decision. I think that you all can select the alternate that you all choose to have. It really is just going to be a presentation tonight, so.
Okay. Tom, if you would like to come forward, please. Okay, our first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for June 16th, 2020. If everybody would direct their attention to those minutes, and are there any changes, additions, or deletions, or corrections?
Not for me.
Hearing none, could we have a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 16th, 2020.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve the minutes as written. Could we have a roll call, please?
We have a motion to approve the minutes from June 16, 2020. Mr. Faring.
Yes.
Ms. McMullen.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Westfall.
Yes.
Mr. Grody.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1, or 5-0, excuse me.
I take it there are no persons present for public hearing? Is that correct?
We'll go check on that just to confirm.
Okay.
I didn't see any.
How you doing, Mark? Okay, there are no persons present, so we will move on. Mr. Iona, anything for items 4 through 8? Or 4 through 7, let's put it that way.
Staff does not have any business associated with items 4 to 7 on the agenda, consisting of a final development plan, a public hearing, informal concept review, or old business.
Okay, then let's move on to item 8, new business, a comprehensive plan, staff conversation. Mr. Iona?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good evening, board members. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I know that the weather is pretty good, so I'll make this brief so that you all can enjoy it. Whenever the weather shifts like this, it reminds me that we don't have too much time left before winter. Tonight, we're going to go ahead and talk about the comprehensive plan, what your role as the steering committee is, and what the next steps are in the process. So I'll kind of kick it off with, the question, what is a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan is really a document that's a blueprint for our leadership, for our boards, for staff, for the residents, for all the organization and business owners within a jurisdiction, in our case, a township, so that they can better understand what that community vision is and how they can work to achieve that. It really takes the different thoughts, ideas, and concepts, and it shapes them into a policy that we can all work to implement. The policy is then used by our township staff to channel resources and implement that vision. So if you can imagine, and I have a presentation if you all want to follow along, but the planning discipline intersects a number of different facets of our life. Planning decisions, as you all know very well, impact the way we get around, our transportation, our mobility. Planning plays a major role in the governance of a community. It impacts our day-to-day life. Long-range plans impact, where we work, where we play, what kind of neighborhoods we have, who lives in those neighborhoods, what type of housing options we have in a community, what that community's quality of life is, whether or not that community preserves natural areas, open space, historical features, or community identity. Planning really does have an intersection at a variety of disciplines that impact our life. And what a comprehensive plan does, especially in a place like Colerain Township, where you have 4 distinct places. You have a rural area on the west side of the township. You have these traditional neighborhoods in Northbrook and Groesbeck. And then you have these, these wonderful subdivisions that are growing along Ronald Reagan, creeping around 275, and then in the northeast part of the township in Pleasant Run. So what a comprehensive plan does is it takes all these different inputs and it puts it together into kind of one central vision for the future of the township. And that's the intent of the comprehensive plan. So why do we do it? Well, the world is changing faster than ever. Whether we like it or not, change is going to happen. And you all know this. We have development applications that change the face or the landscape of the township all the time come before you. So rather than let it catch us by surprise, the point of a comprehensive plan is that we're ready when change happens, so that we can seize opportune moments, so that we can take our resources and strategize them to create the best quality of life that we can in Colerain Township. And planning happens all the time. I mean, people plan, special events. Businesses are always planning so that their products and services will sell. Farmers, they plan when to harvest and plant. I mean, they've done that since the beginning of time. So, why shouldn't communities plan to be successful? So how long have we been doing town planning? And if you look at it, this is interesting. So town planning is an ancient tradition, and oftentimes it did happen, out of just, necessity. But people planned towns early and often to really take advantages of their resources. Back then it was water, land, and food, as well as to defend themselves against invaders. And then obviously they wanted to ensure that they were located on trade routes to get the goods and potentially services that they needed. So it really has been going on since the beginning of time. The picture on this slide actually shows a cross-section of what ancient Greece was planned. But, so that's why we plan. Again, we want to be ready for change when it happens. We want to seize opportunities. We want to know the direction that we're going. And, the comprehensive plan provides a number of benefits. Again, first, it really establishes that overall community vision and long-term goals and strategies. And then part of those strategies talk about how do we achieve these goals. The next thing that one of the big heavy hitters of the plan is that it really allows us to plan for infrastructure and facilities and services. As you all know, with the applications you receive, if sites and areas don't have accessibility to infrastructure or other services, typically you can't drive development there, and it's kind of a self-constraining situation. So one of the things a comp plan does is it can guide infrastructure and facilities to handle the types of things that the community wants to have, whether that's recreation, whether that's jobs, whether that's new development, whether that's new types of housing, services, etc. A comprehensive plan also protects and enhances the environment, and that's a key one. More and more, local jurisdictions are starting to realize the benefits of, preserving and protecting their natural areas, as well as their history and special places. And in fact, if you go to the next bullet, many of them are really using these places to increase their vibrancy, their sense of place, and promoting their community identity. And a lot of them are doing it to leverage, things that they typically did not do, like economic development, like new housing, like new commercial development. Obviously, a big part of a comprehensive plan and a part of a community is to maintain and expand on their commercial and economic base. What does that look like in our current environment? And I'll say this probably again in this presentation, brick and mortar is not king anymore in the retail world. More and more, you're starting to see the rise of, internet startups. You're seeing a lot more tech disruptions into market segments that just typically haven't had that. If you look even here today in Colerain Township, you're seeing larger REITs get into the single-family residential game. So how do we plan for all these things? And what do we set as our path when we're confronted with these obstacles or with these questions? And that's what a comprehensive plan really does. Finally, one of the obvious things is, the comprehensive plan promotes the development of housing to meet community needs. If you look at Colerain Township, we're one of the environmental justice communities that have a significant number of census tracts that have that are flagged for having an aging population. And so part of a comp plan what a comp plan talks about is how do we provide housing that's going to meet all of our community needs, and that's something that you all see all the time because you're kind of the gatekeepers of new development in the township in many ways as applications come to you all. And then finally, one of the things that I really like about a comp plan is that it addresses other specific community needs. And this is really about improving quality of life. Traditionally, comp plans always focused on, land use map and transportation, and that's really it. But as they evolve, we really start to realize how much planning touches people's everyday lives. Maybe not directly, but indirectly, it impacts whether or not kids can, go out and access recreation activities or get exercise in their community, the types of services that people can access, and really how much the design of a community impacts the form and function of people in their everyday life, whether that's good or bad. So advantages of a comprehensive plan continued. One of the big things that you all know very well is that, it sets a policy for decisions, and specifically the zoning commission and the board of trustees, so that when you all have a plan, you all can look at it and review it for consistency with, our comp plan and the objectives contained therein. Another advantage is that, when we write our cookbook, so we have a zoning ordinance, and our zoning ordinance is really the cookbook for development in the township. And, when you talk about implementing the comp plan, there's nothing that maybe is more impactful than the zoning ordinance. Because as you all know, when somebody comes in with a development, they have to meet certain criteria. Whether it's, a single family, a residential, whether it's somebody who owns a single family home and they're trying to build a fence, all the way up to the developer that's building, 139 new units next to a lake. They have to meet zoning requirements. And what this guide does is it takes, it distills all of that input into something that we can use to write regulations to implement and get the development forms that we want. Comprehensive plans also impact state agency decisions. So it gives us a seat at the table when, ODOT or federal dollars or federal projects come to town. It gives us something at the table that we can say, hey, this is where we stand. This is, what we want to see in this area. So it really does, benefit us, so that when that proposal comes through, we have a plan and people have bought into it. Grant funding, I think many of you know this, in order to get grant funding, the first question they ask is, well, what's your plan? What are you going to do with the money? And if you don't have a plan, let me tell you, it's awfully hard to get grant funding without a plan. But if you have grant funding, you can leverage, if you have a plan, you can leverage that into a significant amount of grant funding. You look at the sidewalk plan that we did earlier this year that was adopted. We were able to leverage that into I think it was like a $750,000 worth of sidewalk. But if you all follow what we do here as a township, we are constantly applying for grant funding. We're a scrappy township. We really, truly try to make our dollars go as far as possible. So having a plan really is really beneficial for us so that we can get grant funds. And then finally, my favorite thing is it establishes a priority for township resources. So every year we have that strategic plan. I'm sure you've all heard of it. Township leadership sits down. We meet with elected officials as well as with the public. We do the town hall series, if you all remember from last fall. And what we do is we directly plug in the things that we want to do in that calendar year into that strategic plan. And the way I look at a comprehensive plan as the director of a planning and zoning department is that it directly impacts, the strategic vision and the strategic work plan for my department on an annual basis for the duration of the planning period. So, and not just for us, a comp plan has different actions and recommendations that will be picked up and carried by, everybody, all different departments in the township. There's going to be recommendations in the comp plan that we'll want to connect with MSD or Hamilton County or the Northbrook Group or Greater Northbrook or United Way or different organizations, groups, government entities to get done. So it's not just something that we do and then we keep it in house. It's something that when we make these recommendations, it's looking inward, outward, and across the table. So that kind of wraps up. Excuse me. Okay, so that kind of wraps up what a comprehensive plan is. Again, this meeting is really just to provide an overview and give you all an idea of what your role is as the steering committee, and to provide you some background on the comp plan to date, and then talk about what our future steps are. So the next thing I want to touch on is our comprehensive plan. It's called Imagine Colerain, and it's being called that because we really want to aspire to greatness with this plan. Again, while we can't control what happens in the world or our economy, we can plan for the future and what our township looks like, and what we want to adhere to and persevere through good times and bad. What this plan does is it really gives residents, decision makers, elected officials, township staff, boards, and organizations something to shoot for. And, I always say there's a big saying in planning, and it says, make no little plans. They don't have any magic to stir men's blood. And while I think maybe it could be, that was something that was written in 1887, I think it could be updated to make no little plans. They have no magic to stir residents' bloods. But, there's a thought when planning that, hey, let's do what's just palatable or maybe what we can get across the finish line. But there's a prevailing theory of plans that I've worked on and seen implemented that you shoot for the stars and then you get happy when you hit the moon. And if you're not shooting for something that's aspirational, then you're just settling. So that's really why we've come together with this Imagine Colerain. It's been a long time since we've done our previous comp plan. In 2005 it was the last update that was done in Colerain Township. And while the current plan is good, it's not as forward-thinking as maybe we could be with a plan. And comp plans change. Back in 2005, comp plans really were around many times to just provide guidelines. With this plan and what people are doing now in the field, the best practice is to, instead of just doing guidelines, it's to shoot for things that you want to be. Set an aspiration for your community, and not just in land use and transportation, but across all disciplines and all elements, so that it really is truly a comp plan. So that's really what the basis of this plan is. It's not that we're taking the previous plan and just throwing it aside as if it's no good. It's a good plan. There's some great stuff in there. But we want to take that and then build on it, and then make it something that's aspirational for the community, something for us all to work towards. And there's a number of, what's in a comp plan? Well, you can really kind of pick and choose what you want to have in there. We're using a best practices manual that's in place by the American Planning Association and OKI. And, it's really composed of multiple elements. The big, the heavy hitters still are land use, transportation, and economic development, as well as housing. But more and more, you're seeing a much more prevalent role in your natural systems, historic preservation, community identity, vibrancy, services, recreation. Those quality of life things are becoming more and more important in a comprehensive plan. And that's something that we really want to touch on in this plan that our current plan doesn't. And as it pertains to land use and transportation and economic development, like there's some things that we need to update. Our Colerain corridor, we've done a plan for, if you remember the KZF plan, that addresses things that happen in the right-of-way. And I know not everybody on the corridor agrees with that plan, but it does at least set a vision, and there's some great stuff in there. I think there's like one really contentious thing, which is those left turns, but it really does have some wonderful things that unite that corridor. One of the big things in this plan is going to be, what are the next steps for that? So we have a plan for inside the corridor, inside the right-of-way, but what do we do on actually like outside of the right-of-way? What does that look like? Many buildings in a lot of our commercial areas are at the end of their usable life, whether we like it or not. And what does that turnover look like? What does that new business look like? What happens when new development proposals come for those areas? Again, in summation, a comprehensive plan has a number of elements, and as those elements get drafted, they're going to come to all of you for review. Another big part of a comprehensive plan is the maps and graphics, and that's really how you outline all the input that you received in the plan, and the maps explain, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and the maps are what really does a great job of explaining ideas, concepts, and showing data about where we are, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. The third thing is the third part of a comprehensive plan are your recommendations. So the recommendations for your policies, strategies, and actions. And really what that is it's just technical jargon for, where are we right now? And that's the data. So we're going to find out where we are. Where do we sit right now in land use, transportation, natural spaces, et cetera. And then we're going to say, okay, well, we know where we are now. We've benchmarked that. And we've got a lot of research already on where we are now. We want to figure out where we want to be. So that's really what those recommendations and policies and actions are. Where do we want to be in the future? What's our goal? What's our aspiration? And then we figure out how to get there. How do we get there? And then finally, how do we know we're winning? What are the benchmarks of success along that way? If it's a roadmap from where we are now to the future, how do we know that we've hit the checkpoints along the way? And that's really what a comprehensive plan boils down to. I've seen a lot of comp plans done where each element is 70, 80 pages about transportation and land use. I don't subscribe to that policy. I think a comp plan should be something that anybody in the community, whether you're familiar with zoning, whether you're familiar with planning or not, can quickly pick up and understand where are we now, what are we doing, and how are we going to get there. So this plan will be a very streamlined plan to address these four questions. So if you've seen a lot of comprehensive plans in other communities, some of them are 400 or 500 pages, and they sit on the shelf. Nobody reads it. I don't even think half the staff reads it, to be honest. So in other communities that I've been. But what this will be is really, it's going to dial into, it's going to have some information about, background and stuff like that. But we're not going to do 40 pages of census tables. You can go to the census for that. We're gonna boil all that data down into what it is, what's important in that data, and then we're gonna talk about where we want to be, and then how to get there. So I'll show you all some more of the format as we kind of move not into this presentation, but in the future. Again, this is really meant to just be kind of a kickoff, intro, talk about what a plan is, and give you an idea of your role. And then, finally, the format of the plan is going to be digital based. So unlike your those hard copy documents that I talked about earlier, that places I've worked, they print out 50 of them when the plan's done. They pass out 5 to staff, maybe a couple to the commissioners, and then 45 sit on a shelf for 15, 20 years, and not a lot has happened with them. What we're doing with this one is it's going to be digital based. So if you've looked at the sidewalk plan that we approved earlier this year, it's going to be something that you can access from your phone, you can access from your tablet, from your computer, your laptop, anywhere. And it's going to be interactive, so it'll have maps that you can move around, click. You can get in and actually, touch and feel the recommendations and understand a lot better where they're going and how they're going to be. So, like I said, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Like this really is that in play. So I'll send you all some links after this meeting about different plans that I've personally worked on. A couple of them award-winning, that we did this, and it was hugely successful. So it will be a digital plan. And then finally, it's a living document. So this is a thing that is kind of new. It's not meant to be something that we just, we finished it, and now we won't touch it again for 20 years. It's going to be something that we're constantly visiting. If something comes up and things change, we're going to sit down and say, hey, we need to go back and change that part of the comp plan. If, the needle moves in a different direction from where we thought when we wrote some of these action plans and recommendations, then we're going to all have to meet, have a powwow, and say, hey, where are we at now with this? Is this something we still believe in? So that's kind of where you'll have, like, every couple years or every 5 years, you'll have that kind of, that tune-up. Hey, where are we at with this? Is this still where we think we need to be, and do we need to maybe pivot on something? So that's a comprehensive plan in a nutshell. And now I'll kind of talk about the overview of the process and a little bit about your role. Very basically, a comprehensive plan is adopted by the Board of Trustees, but before it gets there, there's a lot of steps that take place. The two big drivers of content are really your data and your input. And your data is really a lot of, like, we have geographic information systems, mapping. I don't know if you all know what ArcMap is. But we have an extreme amount of data on hillsides, topography, economic data, geographic data, demographic data. We have a ton of different data sets that we can pull in so that we can use them to make smart decisions, right? The other big driver of content in a comp plan is input. And input ranges from everything from just resident input, getting out in the community, talking to residents, doing town halls. We've got a digital input series and a survey that we're releasing that I'll talk about at the end of the meeting. We meet with Hamilton County Soil, MSD, different organizations in the community, professional organizations, the Chamber of Commerce. So we have, like, what I call, like, key person interviews, where we go meet with these organizations and say, hey, what's going on in Colerain Township as it pertains to your group? And what information do you have as a professional that you would like to depart to us? So those are kind of the two big drivers. And when what staff really does is we take all this information and then we put it together, and then we create content. If you're looking at the slide, that kind of goes up and down. So, we kind of sit in between you and the day-to-day, what I call kind of like the front lines. And you all are kind of like in the back making like the executive decisions or the executive producer kind of role. And we're out there kind of, kind of getting things done, doing the production, working with the people on the front lines, taking all of this information and distilling it into something that's usable and actionable. So that's kind of what our role is. But then we also have a role with you. And that is, we staff the steering committee. And what we do is we present to you our findings or our content. So for each element, we will, you can follow along here, we will work down there with the input, the data, and the different stakeholders involved. And we'll distill it into something that we say for each element of the comp plan. This is where we want to go. We'll answer those 4 questions. Where are we now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? And how do we know we're winning? And when we think we've got something good, we're going to send it up to you all, the shepherds, the executive producers, to say, hey, this is what we've heard. This is where we are now. This is where we want to be. What do you all think? Are we answering these questions? Are we missing anything? Is there something that we need to add? Also, we may also have a question for you where we say, hey, we've heard 2 different ways to go on this. What do you all think? So that's kind of your role. And it can go up and down. We may come up to you and you say, we're good with it, or we're not good with it. Send it back down and let's do some stuff. At which point we may go back out and do, staff and then go back down and look at the input and the data. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? Okay. And this kind of cycle can happen, we could do 1 or 2 cycles. I'm hoping it doesn't. Typically I would think that we do a good job, but you never know. I can tell you when I was at the city of Hamilton, we did this. We did it a little different on the steering committee. We had a few more people, but typically we didn't have a lot of kickback. We sent things out by email. Everybody, we had, and everybody just kind of sent it back and said, hey, we think this is pretty good. And then there was one time where we had a little bit of contention and it was like, well, this is kind of conflicting. Can we talk about it? And we had a meeting. So that's what we did, and we moved forward with it. But a lot of the heart of the plan really is done at that staff input and data thing, where we're working with the people, we're following the best practices to get things to you that are in really good shape. It shouldn't come to you very rough. It should come to you very polished and clean so that you all can say, hey, is this ready to go? So the steering committee duties, it's not too much. Really, again, you guys are kind of that executive producer. You're the shepherd of the process. You stay very high level. And, as we get content, we send it to you. Again, by the time it gets there, it's pretty well cleaned up and polished. And you all can say, hey, you're on the right track, or you missed the mark, or hey, you're on the right track, but there's a couple edits maybe you could make. So in that way, again, you guys are kind of the shepherd. You guys are really looking at the process and following it along, more than being the driving force of, rolling up your sleeves and getting into the data and creating, recommendations and things like that. You certainly, if you have input on recommendations and things, you can certainly provide those. But the thought here is that a lot of that's done through that input process that you all will be a part of, through that, kind of through those lower 2 tiers that, again, you all will be a part of those bottom 2 in some capacity. But the thought is when it gets to you all, like you're saying, hey, you guys did follow the process, you listened, and the data, the recommendations matched the input and data. But again, that's not to say that you can't insert additional things if you feel that, things need to be added at that time. The second thing that you all do is you all will help obtain, you'll be a champion, and you're going to help obtain public participation for the plan. and the development of the plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at a later date. At a little later in this presentation. It's not super time. Your role is not super. You're not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's not unless we may need to meet and talk a lot. I'm hoping we don't, but it shouldn't be something that you're meeting all the time and spending tons of hours a week on. It'll be something that we kind of guide and send to you. But there is, as it pertains to public participation, we would ask that you all maybe reach out, or that you all would reach out to some of your, family, friends, and networks to say, hey, this is the plan. Will you fill out the survey? Will you attend one of these input meetings and things like that? So more of you all will transfer some of the information to people you know. And then the third thing is you'll coordinate with us on content. And I've kind of touched on this earlier. If there's things that we are missing or that you'd like us to specifically look at, we certainly will do that as we create the content of the plan. So, again, you all have my email as well as staff's, but, please feel free to reach out to me if there's something that you all would like to have in the plan. I'm happy to put that in there. And then finally, to provide direction on content where, things may change. So if we have two divergent, actions on an item, or two conflicting actions on an item, you all will kind of facilitate a role of kind of working through that, and maybe that the direction where we need to go. That typically doesn't happen too often, but it's something that I do like to mention. So there's the duties that you have. I really see this as maybe being, 2 or 3 meetings throughout the end of the process. We hope to wrap up by the end of the year. Maybe there's 2 or 3 meetings. I'd like to hold these meetings during regularly scheduled business, so it's not any more time out of your day or your evenings. That said, if something does come up, we may hold a special meeting or two. That may happen. Typically, it hasn't happened in my experience too often, but please be prepared to maybe have a special meeting here or there if we need to before the end of the year. I can tell you we don't have a lot of business that's probably coming before all of you that I've seen right now and talking to applicants. So, so it shouldn't be too much more of a time commitment than what you currently have. The one thing, though, I would say is there's a lot of do's, but this is the one don't. And that's don't talk about the plan with residents, elected officials, business owners, or special interest groups. Again, you'll work with us to kind of talk down, or not talk down, but communicate to them. This isn't something where you want to have somebody over for dinner and say, hey, John or Jane, what do you want in the plan? That's not what your role is. So, this is something that, we follow that process. You guys are meant to kind of be on your own up there, and, bipartisan, non-biased kind of body. So that's where you'll provide input, you'll pass information along, but it's not something where people will tell you that, hey, I want to open up this business there, will you put it in the plan? So don't talk to residents. You shouldn't be talking to elected officials or business owners, special interest groups, or things like that about the plan. If they want to have input, these are public meetings, and they're welcome to come to these meetings. So, or they can, and honestly, that input really is done through the digital input series that we're hosting, through meeting with staff, through our comp plan website, and these are all things that we've marketed, throughout the township for people to do. So if anybody does want to talk about it, I've always welcomed throughout this whole process since January people to take time out of their day. I'll do a one-on-one, whether it's during business hours, before business hours, or after. So if you have anybody who wants to talk and they want to provide it, I'm happy to do it. So that's just something. But it's just better if you all aren't there, because that can be kind of like an ex parte communication situation where you're sitting on a board making decisions and advocating for a special interest group as a decision maker. Does that make sense? Excellent. Okay, so I'm getting closer to wrapping up, so I'm not doing as bad as I thought. And then I'll open it up for questions. So the timeline for the plan, you all might have seen this since 2015. We've kind of been in a start and stop on this plan. So, a lot more stop than start. Not that that's a bad thing. There's been transition here. And honestly, I think for the better. We've got a great team. We've got a wonderful leadership. I think the best days of Colerain Township, I truly believe are ahead of us. But for the plan, it has kind of gone up and down and up and down. The time is really now. It's now. It's now or never. We've got to get this thing across the finish line, because the best part of a plan is getting the plan implemented. And if we can't get a plan done, then we have nothing to implement. And I'm not going to kind of harp back on what I was talking about earlier with kind of like, all the changes that have happened in society since the adoption of the last plan, not to mention the changes that have happened, on the ground here in Colerain Township since 2005. Like I said earlier, smartphones weren't around, back in 2006. It seems like it was just yesterday, but unfortunately it's been a longer time. Brick and mortar's not king. We don't develop the same way anymore. Honestly, the best practices in quality of life planning and development have changed significantly. So we need to get this thing across the finish line so that we can, protect and preserve, the future of Colerain. So we're making the best decisions possible and up-to-date decisions. Again, the time is now. We've kind of started this project in January, and, we kicked it off with this research and data part where we really started gathering, all the census data, the demographic data, the geographic data, the economic, all the data stuff is what we started pulling in January. So we've got a good idea of that, like that part of like where we're at. But we've done some public outreach through the comp plan website and some other things and Facebook, but we don't fully understand that where we're at from the public side, which is why I'll talk to you in a second about our digital input series. And then as we move into getting that where we're at from the public, let me back up a little bit. As part of that research and data, we've also done those key person interviews. So we've gone out and met with some of those organizations and groups. I don't think we've done a specific one with the Northbrook group on the comp plan, but we've done countless meetings on where we need to be with that. And we've done a number of just meetings in general in Colerain Township on the kind of where we want to be. But again, so what we're doing here, what we're rolling out over the next month, starting in later August through September, mid-August through mid-September, we're going to be doing this digital input series. It's an outreach to the public and business owners, stakeholders. Anybody can join in. They're going to be online sessions where you can just jump on like a Zoom invite. And then, you can do breakout groups, and we can talk about, the where we are now, where we want to be, and how people think we need to get there. Because, I'll be the first to say, I don't think the professionals have all the answers. And, the public has a lot of great input. We also have our comp plan website and our Facebook page where we've been blasting out a lot of stuff. We've been doing a rotunda series in different key locations throughout the township, where we invite people to, go online and do provide input. All of our invites always say, call staff if you want to do a phone call or talk about it. I know not everybody has digital access or has access to the internet or really even likes using the internet. So for the benefit of all you and everybody out there watching, feel free to call the office. And that's something that we put on every single one of our marketing resources. So anyway, we want to wrap up this outreach to the public and stakeholders, here over the next couple months, and start to draft that content and have the content ready by August, September, October. And if you're smart, you're paying attention, that timeline kind of runs into the input kind of series. But so the beginning of that drafting of the content is where we start to figure out the data of where we are. And as we get the input of where we are from the public and start to, I mean, we've been getting input from the public, but as we start to take that and we put it together, we really will have a better idea where we are. And then towards the end of that, we'll start writing the, drafting up the, where we want to be and how do we get there. And doing all the mapping and stuff like that. Once we kind of figure that all out, we're going to go ahead and start to publish it and then put it into that online format. As we publish content, we're not just going to take it to all of you. We're going to also publish it on our website so that the public can look at it and provide feedback throughout the process. The goal, though, is to kind of have everything wrapped up. We want to have it wrapped up by like November so that we can take it for adoption in December. So it's a tight timeline, but it's definitely not doable. And again, it may be a little bit of a sprint towards the end. So I want to thank all of you for your time in advance because it may be something that requires a little bit more time towards the end of the year. But again, we'll do our best to keep you informed because that's what we're here for. We'll keep you informed, up to date, and then, obviously if you have any questions, you can contact us along the way. As it pertains to this timeline and meetings, this is kind of our kickoff meeting. The next steps really will be as we get content, because that's what you all are. You're the shepherds of content. You're the gatekeepers of content, the executive producer. We don't have a lot of content that's in its polished state to send to you yet. We will. And as we start to get that done, we'll send it over to all of you, and that will kind of determine our meeting schedule. And we'll have to make it work. So we'll try to stick with our regularly scheduled meetings, but if for some reason we need to call a special meeting, we may have to, like tonight. I don't foresee it being a ton of meetings. I'm hoping like 2 or 3, and I'm hoping we hit the mark. But if we don't, we want to get it right. So, and that's a tentative timeline. If for some reason we hit a roadblock, which I don't think we will, but if we do, that could get extended a little bit. So. I do want to put one last thing on your plate before I finish up, and that is this kind of like champions engagement thing. So I talked about engagement and you all kind of championing the plan and being like a pass-through for information. So you're sending information to different groups and organizations or social networks you have in the township. So we're doing this digital input series, and I think you all have one of these flyers on your at your desk. So one of the things, and for all the people at home, if you visit imaginecolerain.com, we have it explains what this flyer is about, and really it's a digital input series. So we worked with the Citizens for Civic Renewal in partnership with them, and they got a grant to do this input series for us. And what I love about it is that it's not me talking to residents, because that can be portrayed as me steering a plan. I get to play a very unbiased role. I get to sit on the sidelines and let Citizens for Civic Renewal, this is Jeffrey Steck, he'll be leading these online discussions. He's kind of leading this survey. We're doing the marketing because we know the people, right? But he's done this before. He did our town hall last year. But he's really leading this kind of input process so that we get unbiased information. I don't want to steer anything in one way or another. But what he'll do is he's going to get input from all of our residents, hopefully our business owners who will come out and they'll be a part of it, and all the stakeholders, so that we really do get true input on this plan to guide the content of the plan. So you all have this on your desk. And you'll probably be contacted by staff about how you can reach out to, again, your networks and people about the plan. So that's all I have for the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one. Are you going to use the current census information? It's not out yet, but how do you filter that in?
So we'll use the census data available. We may not have the newest census, but they have extrapolations and current data that we can use to make some of our decisions.
When you provide us with the information, will you have some expectations in those emails as well? You know, like, hey, focus on this graphic, or how's this sound?
Yeah,
Things like that.
yeah. So when we send it out, we're not just going to let you just have it. We'll make sure that we point out different things. If there's issues that we have, like, hey, we really, exactly. So if, hey, there's two conflicting viewpoints on this, what do you think? Or, you know, in some cases, though, we may just send little pieces at a time where it's like, hey, we feel like we're on the right track and we've done these things. You know, what do you think? So we will make sure that we be as actionable as possible in our emails. And there will be, we will have deadlines with things like reviews and stuff like that. But our emails will give you a lot of instruction, which is why I'm not getting into it tonight, because each of those instructions may be a little different, but we will make sure that, you know, you guys have all the information you need to make the best decisions possible.
So do you have a group within your staff that's primarily working on this as a, so-called as a committee or what have you?
So we have a comp plan team. So we have 3 service lines in the department. One is, and we've got 5 people in the department. Me, 2 full-time planners, a full-time code enforcement person, and 2 part-time code specialists. The 3 codes people do just code enforcement. And then me, if you met Taylor Grunwald, the new senior planner here on your way in, and then Jesse Urbancic, our planner, we do all the planning stuff here. And then, you know, we'll be we're going to be the content team. That said, we'll be working throughout the township with, you know, different people in the township to make sure that they're providing their input. But we'll be doing the heavy lifts on the content creation. But that's not to say we're not going to have different departments in a room to talk about what they need and things like that, yeah.
For this Imagine Colerain, with the flyer that you have
Yes.
given us this evening, for those of us that live in HOAs, typically have newsletters and so forth, is this something you would want us to get into a newsletter?
That would be amazing, yes, that would be great.
Okay.
That'd be great. So we have been contacting different champions. Just this week, we did a rollout for it. And, you know, we've been doing a lot of that outreach. But, you know, HOAs, places of worship and things like that are just wonderful. So you all will get a phone call from either Taylor or Jesse or maybe both to discuss, you know, hey, who do you know and who can we pass this information along to, or who can you maybe put us in contact with?
Mm-hmm.
And can that input include some of the subject matter experts, such as members of the police department, fire, EMS, public works?
There'll be
Those that are out there driving and may see the goat paths where people are walking with sidewalks, and, you know,
exactly.
they know our township as well as residents do.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So they'll also be at the table too, and that's part of what we'll do internally, is talk about some of those things.
Okay, good.
And there may be, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, we may do one more like meeting, or maybe I might put it in an email or send you some content about like, well, we'll think about it. But, you know, really like kind of, so I've talked about what a comp plan is. And now with that question, I probably could have provided more detail on it, but it really is like, it's very high level. But, you know, it also can dive in very specifically on certain things. So, you know, I may kind of do another like segment and just send it to you all, or maybe do a video or send you guys videos about kind of what a comp plan is, a little bit more information about it. Because I did 5 slides and I maybe talked for 15 minutes and that might not have covered it. So I might give you all some additional resources on where you can go if you have questions about a comp plan and things like that. But very good question, thank you.
So this item number 2 on Imagine Colerain, is that going to be like a chat room or something with?
Well, it'll be kind of like a chat room, yeah. So it'll be like you can. The goal is that, you know, if you're by yourself, your family, your friends, whoever, significant other, that you can, you know, just log in on a computer, or you can use your phone or your tablet, wherever, and just kind of log in and then have a discussion. And you'll talk to us, but you'll also do like a breakout with other residents, business owners, visitors, or whoever, and you'll be able to talk to them, and then we'll take all that information and distill it down into like, hey, what are the main themes? And it's interesting, honestly, through that, you find out how much you have in common and how much you don't, but you typically have a lot more in common with people than you think. The top three are usually very similar when you go to these groups in many places. And a lot of the information that we've done so far and input that we've received so far is kind of where I thought it would be. But there's always that 20% where you're like, wow, that's great. And so institutional knowledge is a wonderful thing with some of these meetings. But again, they're always a little bit different. So we want to get as many people as we can there. So, yes.
Okay.
And then my only feedback, I love digital. However, I do live in a neighborhood that has high senior percentage, and those seniors we have a very hard time reaching. And some of them are the ones that have the most history and sometimes the better ideas of what's worked, what hasn't worked in the past, and so forth. Is there any plan at all to try to include them in some of the input? I know that HOAs and churches and things were mentioned, but any kind of putting it in the community press or?
Yeah, Ms. McGraw, that's a great question. So we will be doing the survey. We have hard copies that people can fill out, and then we'll enter them in digitally. The great thing about digital is you can data mine it and figure out different things and use metrics. But we will be doing like a digital survey. Once we will also be doing like in person, fingers crossed at some point maybe in the future. So we've done a presentation already at the Historical Society, which has a more mature demographic in attendance. But that is something that as we move through this plan, we may need to reevaluate and take a look at maybe doing a public meeting where we can, or depending on what the survey responses are, to see who we're getting.
Or I wonder if maybe flyers at Kroger, Meijer, places
Yeah.
like that as well. Like, hey, here's what's happening. If you want to ensure your knowledge and input is received,
Right.
call Mike, whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And then also I noticed on the flyer, even though I know that it's digital, there isn't a disclaimer to call you.
No, this one wasn't. Okay. The new senior planner didn't know that we needed to have that on there. And I know as soon as I said call the staff, I looked down and I was going to bring that to attention. We need to add it to this thing. So it's preliminary. We're kind of rolling it out this week. So I put that on my list of things to change. So thank you for pointing that out. And we'll send it high and low. I mean, we've had boards up at the library for quite some time and out in the road. I mean, we put them up as many places as we can. But it is difficult to get doing it like paper and pen is difficult to do. But having like maybe a drop box for people to drop things off or drop ideas off, and then maybe give us a phone call is something that we're looking at. It's something we actually looked at today when we had a meeting. So.
Okay, any other questions or comments or reactions? Very well done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I want to thank you all for your commitment. I know you guys do a lot on any given year, but this is a comp plan year, and it really, the residents don't know how lucky they are to have, such a committed group of people. And, together we're going to do great things. So I look forward to working with you, and onward and upward.
Okay. Okay, moving on with our agenda then. Anything else in administration or announcements?
Oh, yes, so we do. We have a new senior planner. Her name's Taylor Greenwald. She comes to us from the port, if you know the Port of Cincinnati. So she is very versed in actually like the doing part. So I talked about this a few meetings back. One of the things many planning departments do is they do a plan, they throw it on the shelf, and there's a great discussion, but they don't take action. I'm a big fan of more doing. The plan's the first part, and it's fun, but the best part is actually when you get out and you see the change that you plan for happen. Whether that's 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, sometimes it's a long game. But what she will do is she's going to be a huge help and more of that, like the doing part, the implementation. If you follow any of the projects the port does, they're all about doing. They've taken a lot of neighborhoods in Cincinnati that, weren't doing so great, and they've really turned them around. So she's going to be a great asset to the team. She's got a great personality, and I think some of you met her on the way in. So, we're lucky to have her. We've got a great staff member in Jesse Urbancic. So, we're slowly building that dream team. And for me, it's really about realizing that goal of like, I want Colerain Township to be, a regional leader in planning and zoning, our department. I want people to look to us for, hey, what's the best practice? Well, Colerain Township. So we've got a great leadership team. We got a great department, and Taylor's going to bring a lot of skills. So I look forward to the future.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the title senior planner versus, is Jesse a?
Jesse's a planner. So Jesse is a planner. I typically keep, I run a pretty horizontal operation, to be honest. And in planning, you have to, because there's just so many different things that come in. So I don't really silo a planner into a specific role. They might be a lead on something, but that kind of changes because, we have our strategic plan. But this year, when I first got here, we were planting trees and grow spec. And then the next week we were administering a grant. So there's just all sorts of things that kind of come down what I call the kitchen sink to us. But then we have like the planning stuff, the day-to-day administration for, everything from the fence to Stone Creek to Lake Gloria to, the code enforcement stuff. So I don't typically silo anybody into anything, but you'll probably see her doing some of the zoning commission stuff too. And she'll be a big part of the comp plan and then the implementation process. So. And the Northbrook group, she'll probably be working with them a good amount too. So yeah, we haven't figured out every little detail of what our roles will be. Right now, the big thing left to do this year is the comp plan. We get it across the finish line, and then 2021 is when we really turn it up a notch. And so I'm really excited for next year.
Okay, any other announcements?
I have none.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments or questions? I was talking to a business owner right down on Springdale Road. And this person, I don't know if this person had factual information or not, but is there any truth to the rumor going around that Northgate Mall is closing? Have you heard that?
None that I'm aware of. We talked to them actually yesterday, and they're great people. We talked to them about maintenance. They, with Macy's leaving, there's some things going on, and with obviously the epidemic we're in, that hits brick and mortar retail. It goes back to why we're changing some of our things in the comp plan. But no, they not that I'm aware of. I think they're doing pretty well. So,
Okay.
for given the circumstances, I should, so. But no.
I take it our next meeting is August the 18th?
Next meeting is August 18th. We don't have anything on the agenda. We probably will hold that September meeting though, so keep that open, and we will schedule it and put it on the website.
Okay, so there is no August meeting then?
There will not be an August meeting.
Okay, all right. And could we have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, I don't think we need a roll call on that. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.